Hello, everyone. Welcome to the sessions. And my name is Max. And today I am accompanied by professional colorist Diego Yhama and Tony, the professional online editor, and also Simon Walker. And in today's webinar, we'll be talking about color grading. And it's a series of 5 webinar. If you can see, it is starting today in November 2nd until November 30th. The first webinar will be talking about fixing color from set to post. And then the second one will be discussing the traits. What are the traits of a good colorist? What do you need to know to be a colorist? And then there will be another sessions about breaking the image, and then we'll be looking into strategies and recipes for crafting a great looks. And in the end, we will close our grading webinar with a grading and multiple deliverables. And this webinar is being recorded, and if you would like to see the previous sessions, it is also recorded and uploaded to our YouTube channel, and it is under the Maxon Volume Program Training. And all this webinar will be recorded and then will be uploaded into this channel. So to
Fantastic.
start up this webinar, I will hand it over to Simon. Simon.
Well, just to give you everyone a kind of idea where we're coming from for this month, as you've joined us, multiple people who are attending have joined us over the past few months, so thank you and welcome back again. And we thought we'd spend November investigating all things color and color workflows, and really we had a collective discussion about it. And basically these sessions are what we would want to see if we had 5 Mondays in November, and just to kind of talk through a lot of these kind of weird and wonderful settings in color grading. They used to call it the dark art of color grading because now many of us as editors have inherited the need to do all different types of disciplines, whether it's fixing the audio, collecting the check from the client, making sandwiches for the crew, or doing the color grade. And so all those are genuine kind of disciplines we have to do now. And so what we've done, we've got a variety of experience, both practical and theory, amongst all of us. And so we're going to dive into as much as we can get into, so which is good that we have 5 weeks inside January, or 5 Mondays in January. But this isn't the be-all and end-all of everything that is known to color grading. So we'll give you a whole bunch of links for people that we look up to as well along the way. But essentially, as Mac just outlined, we want to give you a good rounded knowledge of our production experience and answer some of those questions. And I predict in advance we'll get questions on things like ACEs and color gamut and calibration of monitors. And I don't have a $30,000 Dolby monitor. Does that make me not a colorist? And so on. So we'll attempt to cover those all the way through. But as usual, please ask questions as we're going along, and we'll attempt to answer those and interrupt each other. So that's essentially what we're trying to go for this 5 weeks. Right. So what we'll do then, if I chuck it over to Tony, Tony's got some really interesting things about scopes to talk about. And what we thought we'd do in this session is start off with scopes and then kind of talk about some of the flavors of the disciplines that we have to go into. We're spending some time in Resolve as well as a few other programs. So we've had cinema, we've had After Effects and so on over the last few months. So we definitely need to give Resolve some love for these sessions. But
Finally.
It's not really just down, finally, yes, I know, but it's not just down to one program, where hopefully we'll kind of reveal, and the conceit is we'll demystify the idea of the concept of some of these topics that are independent of the actual software that you might be using. So hopefully that's something you can use, whatever host app or whatever grading app you're using. Already Glenn's jumped in. When we get ACEs in Cinema 4D and Supercomp, the quick answer is we're looking at it. So maybe I'll have more information over the period of these sessions, but absolutely, Glenn, you win the prize for first ACEs question.
Yeah.
So, okay, I'm going to make you presenter now, Tony. Here we go.
Okay. I think I'll start off by just, let me jump right in my screen here and kind of show you I'm living inside of a UI here. So
very cool. Just going to turn off my webcam, by the way. I'm just going to recommend that we do that so then we can see the screen a larger size. There you go.
And actually, I'll do the same with mine. All right.
Same here.
Okay.
There you go. So you should see a bit larger in the window.
Okay. So hopefully everybody can see me.
Yes.
Can see you still got your webcam on, Tony.
Do I?
Yeah.
Okay.
Your webcam is still on.
All right. I love the technical stuff that I do a million technical things, but sharing my webcam is not one of those things.
There you are, man.
Okay. So now while we're waiting my camera to autofocus again. So now we're living inside of this UI. This program is called ScopeBox. A lot of really cool things you can do with it. But I really just want to break down the awkward conversation of talking about reading scopes. I think if you're in a room full of people, half technician, half producer, half, client, whatever it is, a lot of the times if somebody is looking at the scopes or somebody asks you to read the scopes, it's kind of this like long pause. And I've seen so many times when it's just been that weird thing that nobody wants to admit they do or they don't know. Now I'm gonna start it off kind of casual, and then we have the scientific explanations, and super technical stuff that Diego and Simon can chime in with. But I want to just show you kind of where things live, and I'm going to show you. I have a colored light panel here, and just kind of show you where things live live here as I'm doing this. So let's just talk about these scopes here in the meantime. I'm going to go to my RGB parade, and you can see there's a lot of initially you can see the red here. All right, a little more red in here in the skin tone. And then also it's kind of blue. It's just, I have this kind of color cast going on here. And that's just the temperature of this LED light that I have. And then you can even see kind of where things live. And when you want to balance them out, right? So if I had something here, like a white piece of paper, right? You can see kind of on my scopes here. If I look at, on my RGB parade, right? So you can see where the red, green, and blue channels are. But then look inside of the waveform here, right? Or even the vector scope. You can see where colors are leaning. So here's my red, magenta, the blue, cyan, the green, and the yellow. All right, so let me give you a practical example of this. And I know I'm kind of talking really fast. That's something I do, but we're also in a 40 plus minute space here. So let me turn on this color hue and just show you. I'm gonna give some color cast to myself. So now I kind of look angry and evil with this red light. And let's go here and I'll go to blue, and you can see these things kind of update. So as I'm doing this, now you can see, and then here's the green. Now I'm going like Incredible Hulk here, all right? And you can see where things kind of live. It's not too much, but the more that, if that light, I'll pull this light off my desk here. That light would have come closer to me, right? So this light is green. And now you can see, look at what it's doing to the scope. It's leaning heavily green in the vector scope. And then you can see the way it's spread out in the RGB parade, how much space it's taking up there. So like with this color cast here, right, now you can see. And then I can also, again, by the way, these lights are really fun. They're aperture lights. It's the, I want to say it's the M9, M3, something like that. But great lights, and they can change color on the fly through an app. So that's what I'm using here to demo. But, the whole point here is that you can see the vector scope is going to show you where you're leaning, and these targets here on the outside, the red, the magenta, the blue, the cyan, the green, and the yellow. So you get your primaries, right? Red, blue, and green. And then you have your secondaries, right? Or not secondaries. And again, I'm talking very casual about it, but just to kind of show you where things live, so you can see where things are balanced. And if an image we're leaning too blue, it's a little too cool, you'll be able to see, and you get a really good visual there. Also inside of different applications, you have ways that you can measure So inside of this vector scope here, I'm viewing it. In this one, it's mono. In this one, it's weighted, which is showing you kind of heavier density in the pixels. So you can see in here, like you can see some fine pixels here. Let me see if I can draw that out. You can see kind of the white areas are the heavier areas versus in this one, it's kind of mono. And basically you're just going to see a big grouping there versus seeing density. So anybody want to chime in too, by the way? I didn't mean to.
Tony, I had a couple of questions for you, my questions. Do you have to have a separate computer to set up Scopebox? Can you run it off the same machine?
You
or
can
are
run
you
it
taking
off
a
the same
feed from your camera?
That's a perfect question. So you can run it and pick your source. They actually have something called Scope Link. So if you wanted to set up an old machine separate, you can, which is great. You breathe life into your $400 computer that you bought 5-10 years ago. That's great. Using I/O, of course, using hardware. But you could use it right now. I'm running it on the same machine that I have my webcam hooked up to, and I'm running a switcher. But there's something called Scope Link, which basically, if I'm in Adobe Premiere, if I'm in Vinci Resolve, if I'm in Final Cut Pro 10, or even in Avid, I want to say in Avid as well. I'm not confirming that. But inside of there, you can actually basically run this as a separate window on a separate screen and basically have full screen scopes and then measure them based on the signal that's coming from the output of your timeline. So that's a great question.
For example,
I
would add
to
something here.
Oh.
Yeah, I would add something here is that in many cases you want external scopes. So what I'm using, I love Scopebox. So what I'm using is that I'm taking the signal out from my monitor to the Scopebox. So I'm monitoring my monitor signal and not the inside scopes of the program. That is actually better to control the image and what are you looking at.
And actually, I want to add one thing. Speaking of that, it costs a lot of money to buy an external device that just runs scopes. So for the cost of what Scopebox is, you're saving a couple $1,000. Because how much does anybody know off the top of their head how much like a QC scope set of scopes costs?
$5,000. We installed dozens of them for the last sports tournament I did. And so yes, it's not an inexpensive item.
Not at all.
I have a questions, if I can squeeze in my questions.
Of course.
What is the benefit of knowing all of this? I mean, probably this is the most burning questions in a person that just starting out color corrections and so on. What is the benefit of me knowing how to read the scopes? And then on top of that, there is also a questions from Nicholas. I hope I pronounced your name right, Nicholas. There's a question from Nicholas. When would you use the waveform scope versus the parade?
So there's let me answer the first question. I'll get to the waveform versus the parade, and I think Diego can also chime in. Like scopes these are all different measurements, and these are ways that you can view data in different graphs. So they're measuring similar data in different graphs, and you can see where things live. And if you like the vector scope and you want to see where the targets are and where things are from the inside out, you can also measure your saturation too. So I'll talk about that in just a sec. But the main thing for why is this kind of an important thing? Right now, I have these two 1080 kind of consumer monitors. Do I trust them all the way? No. To see something technically correct, I would like to measure it on a scale that's standard across the board. So the main reason for using something like this is, like, especially even in camera, when you see this kind of stuff in camera, I don't trust the tiny LCD. There's times, and we'll go through this a little later, times when you kind of eye it and you're like, okay, that looks right. And then there's times when you're like, I need to technically see, because somebody is seeing a color cast on their side, and then on my side, I'm not seeing that at all. So that's when you use this to measure and give you a consistent value. So now I know that it's technically correct. So I would say
Fantastic. I see.
that's the main reason for.
That's a great answer. Thank you, Tony.
And then I don't know if I answered the other question, but
yeah, the second question is the question from Nicholas. When would you use the waveform scope, and when will you use the parade?
So let me show one quick thing, and I think maybe Diego or Simon could chime in. The let's say, for instance, the you want to measure, if you want to look at, you know, the cast, and then you also want to look at the saturation of an image. So let me see here, and I will show you on my adjustments here. And if I can find it, this is always the fun part. Let's see.
Just whilst you're doing that, Tony, I just wanted to chime in with another question. We're going to, in a second, look at scopes in post-production, but this is a fantastic tool, Scope Box, for fixing it before you've actually shot it. And this is why we're starting off with this, and this is why Tony suggested this, in fact, because you have, in this case, you're taking this scope feed right off the camera. And so often we're having to fix things that are already shot, but this is a wonderful way to be able to test things out before you've actually acquired any of the images.
So this actually makes your job easier in the post-productions. Am I correct, Simon?
Fix it in pre, isn't it? Fix it on set.
Yeah.
Fix it on
right.
And
Shoot it
actually,
right. What it is.
I mean, is what I think is that you have to use it on set. If you are not using on set and you are just believing in what you are watching by your eye or that you're looking, it's kind of difficult. It's kind of difficult. And also talking about some technical things about the skin, you can say that on set you can have for example, the whites, the skin tone for the whites between the 50 and 70% of the waveform, the Hispanic between 35 and 55%, and the darker skins in around 25% of the waveform. And Tony just mentioned about the line of the skin tones in the vector scope. That lines depend of the color light that you have it. I mean, for example, if Tony put a yellow or something like, okay, right now he has a red, so it's going to be similar. But if he put another light, definitely will look to another part. This line is really, in some way, as Tony says, a technical point of view to where the skins are, but don't expect that if you have a scenario full of different lights, your light will be there, because there's going to be some spill from the lights into your skin.
Speaking of lights, I'm using like 3 light sources, and this is, I'm mixing lights, and this is really an undesirable look. So just to put that out there. So, but yeah, you know, think of these as targets. This is kind of what I just want to leave this topic on, is think of these as targets, right? And then with this, you know, when you look at the RGB parade or you look at the waveform, you can change the way that they are. Right now I have my waveform in this colored version, right? So then I can change it from this colored mode into weighted. And now you can kind of see almost like a hologram, and you can see the pixel density, and it shows you where things land. Versus if I look at it in this color mode, now I can see that that's a lot of red right there. So I can read the red and the blue, and I'm seeing them differently. So these are all ways to lay out your image, right? And as I'm doing that, you're seeing my fingers dance here. It's pretty cool. Best way to talk with your hands when you have scopes. You know, but the idea is that all the data that your image is sending out, now you can actually translate that to values on these scopes and see the targets and see where you're landing. And if your monitor is not calibrated, you can still see that based on your signal. So that's my.
That is really nice. So you can always be objective about the color.
What was that?
So you can always be sure and be objective about your color decisions or correcting decisions or anything.
Technically,
right?
You can technically be. And when I say technically, it's not the question mark. Like, yeah, technically that's right. You know, I mean, like, to the spec, you are right there where you need to be by the number, so to speak. Not like when somebody says, yeah, technically that's correct. Like if I were a lawyer or something like that. you know, but you know, the idea is
Yeah,
this is landing exactly where it needs to be, and you see
exactly.
it. And I've
Yeah,
literally done things here with a semi-consumer, a prosumer setup, and then take things back to a lab where things are completely, you know, high-end monitors, nothing in there costs less than $10,000, you know, this kind of stuff. But I already got it to a good point when I'm at home on my prosumer setup. And I even, you know, whenever I'm done, I can watch it on a 4K HDR consumer set and see how that looks too. But then the idea is like I'm doing it with scopes and I'm doing it with numbers and guides. So that's really it. With that
fantastic.
said, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I want to hand the baton off, because otherwise I
Yeah,
will talk all day and we don't have all day. So, and then let me add my webcam. So let's see, Simon, who am
I'm going to
I?
switch it. I'm going to switch it over to Diego, because Diego's got some themes to take over from this, about the scopes. But I've been admiring the kind of dark background that you've got in there, because one of the other things we can mention is exactly what Diego's got on the screen now, with eye fatigue when you're doing too much on the screen as well. I can see your screen, by the way, Diego.
All right. Okay, so yeah, I'm okay. Yeah, there you go. So yeah, we were talking about when we were preparing this session, we were talking about, hey, how many time can we be in a grading room? Is it good to stay 7 hours, 8 hours? Even I know people that stay for 14 hours. So in many cases, Tony, we're talking about it. It's like you have to believe your scopes. The scopes are great. Yeah. And you can also, I mean, you also need to believe or to understand that your eye is not the best thing. It's great, but your eye get used so fast to the images. So for example, if I'm looking at, I don't know, something I'm grading, and it's not going to be really nice, but my eye will love it. And I don't know if for you guys happened, for Simon, that you start grading an image and you're spending an image 2 hours and you see it beautiful, then you go out and then you return and you think, hey, what is that? So talking about that, eye fatigue is really important to control. And what I'm saying to you is really fast tips to, in some way, to reset your eye. Think that this is similar as when you are in an airport and you start smelling perfumes. And at the end, all of the perfumes smell the same. So with the eye,
yeah,
we're going to make the same.
I can relate
So
to that, Diego. Yes.
yeah. So for example, with the eye, you grade many images, and then you say, hey, which one, or where is the white, where is the black? So it's always a good idea to have right now I'm in Resolve, to have in the gallery, for example, 50% gray, and to look at it, and now you are in some way resetting. This is like the coffee. Yes, this is like the smell of the coffee, but for the eye.
Yeah.
So you are resetting your eye. I always love also to have some white and to have some pure RGB colors. Based on that, it's like, okay, I'm saying to my eye, don't go to the different branches of color, just stay in the most technical colors, and especially in this one, that is the neutral color that in most of our grading suites we use. I don't know if you guys have any other tip about eye fatigue or something like that.
Sure.
That's a great tip about the gray, by the way, because the classic example of how the eye adapts to a scenario is given. People usually talk about the Matrix, and when you first start watching the movie, you're very aware, especially on the scenes that are colored green, that you're watching something stylized. But it only takes 5 or 10 minutes for your eyes to get used to it. And there's a classic teachers. I think it's a French teacher who was talking about getting their students to paint eggs, and they painted them as white, even though in the scenario that she'd set up, the little set, that they were actually colored with a pink light. but all the kids in the class actually painted them with the color that they thought they were going to be, and that's what our brain can do sometimes. So it's great to be able to reset your eyes, so back to something like gray, or monochrome displays, how people used to do it way back when, to set that to black and white rather than color, and so you can remove that kind of secondary color that your eyes can convince you that you're seeing.
Yeah, definitely.
That is such a great tips, and that doesn't cost me any money. I like that tips.
Yeah. And also, I want to share you, this is something really nice. If you're starting to grading, and for example, you have an image like this, I will have it here, and you start like something, okay, I will put warm, warm, warm. Every time you're making this, your eye get used, and you start liking it, all right? So
Yeah.
sometimes a good technique is go strong, and then start decreasing it. And now your eyes get used to the reduction, and now to the, in some way, to the hardest part. This is also great when you are using contrast, or when you are adding contrast to the image. Start really strong, and now start decreasing it. Because when you start making like this, like this, like this, your eye get used, and this is a problem.
So it's better to start strong, and then after that reduce it step by step,
Yes.
little by
Yes,
little.
for example,
I
if
see.
you're looking, or if I think as a human beings, we like some colors more than others. So for example,
Yeah.
I usually, when I start grading, like some years ago, I was really contrasting. I was using a lot of contrast. And then I say, hey, why not start using a lot and then decrease? And after that, my image got better. Now I get used, but sometimes I feel that you can start doing, you can also make this with the color panels. Go strong, and then decrease. This is really good.
There's a nice story that Vinci Shaw, who's one of the founders of the International Colorist Academy, I remember him telling me years ago that grading is like focusing a camera. You always go too far and then you bring it back. And that's kind of stayed with me every time I have to grade a sequence.
That is awesome. That is a really great way of thinking of it.
All right. So based on that, we were talking, I always think that when I'm in a grading software, I feel like this. This is like Tony.
Yeah.
Tony probably was the pilot there.
Exactly. It's a really nice analogy.
Yes. But I mean, it's always happened like this. You can find here is Resolve, but for example, if I move to Premiere, I have also something really similar. So the main thing to don't get lost, imagine, for example, imagine if you're a pilot and you don't know what are these things. When are you going to finish? Probably in the sea, or I don't know when. All right, so based on that, this tool, the scopes are really the best guide to tell you where you are and what do you need to move in order to color grade your image. And this is really important to know about it. Tony was just saying, okay, we are doing this in set. On set is really important. But what about here in the color grading software? So for example, let's think in the tools that you can have on set. The first one can be the exposure or the iris. Yeah, this one is going to increase the amount of light or decrease the amount of light. Yeah. Where do you find the exposure in DaVinci Resolve? We can say that the closest tool is the offset, this one over here. And now I can go to the Nicholas question. The waveform is really great to show the amount of light. So let me show it to you when I'm moving it. Now you see that my waveform is moving all the tonal range from my image. And this is really great because it does look like an iris. You are increasing or you are decreasing. And it's always a good idea to test these tools. For example, I have some great patterns. We shared it with you a link. We're going to share it with you a link that you can find the same ones and you can test it. Because based on that, you can say, okay, here my offset is going to work like exposure in the camera. but that the exposure in some other programs works the same as in Vinci Resolve. For example, let's look right now here, I'm in Premiere. And in Premiere, I'm going to make something really similar. I have my grayscale and I have the lumetri. And let's all of us look at the lumetri scopes of my waveform and let's move it. So as you notice, it looks completely different than the one of Resolve. But the main question is that, okay, exposure actually looks, we say exposure in real life. Yes, we don't say offset, but the offset in Resolve work closest that as we think as the exposure can be. So this is really important because, I mean, you can some words can be the same in some different software, but they can be completely different. So as you notice here, for example, the exposure in lumetri is moving the tonal range, but the black is staying in the same position. And when I'm increasing it, it's making a roll off in the highlights that in some way is preventing us to clip the highlights so fast as we are doing here. The main problem that I found, for example, in this part is that, for example, when I'm moving my exposure, look, I'm moving my blacks all the time. Yes. But when I'm moving my exposure in Premiere, in Lumetri, I'm not moving the blacks. The blacks are always going to be in the same position. The same happen, for example, if I go to colorist, and here I have the exposure, and if I move it, look, the blacks are staying in the same position, and he actually is something some way different than in the one in Lumetri, because he's not making a high roll-off. This one is completely linear, but the black is staying in this position. So one of the main questions will be, okay, which one is better, which one to use? What I will answer in this part is, as a colorist, you need to know the different tools, and before doing anything, you need to experiment. You need to experiment with this. So for example, let me just experiment with this offset in a real image. I have it here. And for example, let's look at here. Okay, so how the offset or the exposure or the iris is going to work in Vinci Resolve? Look, I'm increasing light and I'm decreasing light in this image. All the tonal range is moving. So what about if I go to Premiere and I look at my same image and I move it, just put it here, and look, and I'm using the exposure. Look, the blacks are staying in the same or in the original position where I have the image, but it actually moves the whole from the you can say from the mid black to the highlights. So it's a really good way to test the image before, and that is really important. The other tool that you have in set that is really nice is temp and tint. For example, Tony we're talking about different lights, and all of the lights are measured in Kelvin, and they have different temperature, color temperature. They can be yellow, they can be blue, I move it to blue, or they can be yellow. As you see, this is really great for balancing. For example, I'm balancing this image really fast, and also the camera sensors sometimes move from magenta to yellow. So for example, here we have the tint, and I can move in from magenta to yellow. And I can balance an image really fast using temp and tint that are actually set tools. For example, I'm doing this here in Resolve. And if I go to Premiere, I have the same in Colorista, for example. Look at it. Let me move temp.
I've got a question for you then, Diego, here, because we have seen many times when we've attended classes that you adjust the color of the color wheels, and that is a bona fide way of actually changing the temperature and the tint. But actually, is there a perfect way? Can you get away with just adjusting the tint like you're doing here without going to the color wheels? Is one better than the other, or will both work? Are you still a colorist if you're using the tint?
Let me just explain you this with this 10 step. This is a great question. It's a great question. What I always think is, let me show you here what it's doing. I have 10 steps, and when I'm moving the temp and tint, look what is happening in my waveforms. The black is staying in the same position, and all of the 9 steps are moving. The same with the tint. All right. And the good thing is that the black is staying in the same position. So based on that, what is going to be the decision to use temp, tint, or the color wheels? If you have an image, for example, this one, and you look at here at the RGB parade, going back from Nicolas' question, and you see, okay, my blacks are really similar in the 3 color channels. All right. So based on that, because temp and tint are not going to affect my pure black, I can use it and I can find a good result. So I think that this idea is really nice. That's the reason that I say test the tools. Test the tools, because temp and tint in here in Premiere, or look, Premiere is doing absolutely the same. It's not moving the black, and also in Resolve, the temp and tint is not moving the blacks. So answering that and completing that answer, if your blacks in the RGB parade are blacks, but the rest of your image has a color cast, I will definitely use temp and tint. If not, I will use the color wheels, leaf, gamma, and gain. I don't know if
this is a great answer. Yeah, absolutely. And so it comes back to what you were saying originally, is knowing what the different controls do when you adjust them and how they are then controlling how your image becomes adjusted.
Yeah.
So it's back to the old answer, it depends, which we had to mention at least one every week.
And it depends, and there are no rules, actually. That's the best thing. That's the best thing of that. And finally, something really, really interesting is that here you have leaf, gamma, gain, but in Premiere and in Colorista, you have shadow, midtone, and highlight. All right, and probably you're thinking, why the different names? I don't know what is the answer, actually, why they have different names, but they're mostly doing the same. Mostly, this is leaf, this is gamma, and this is gain, as here in Resolve. But for example, in Resolve, if you are moving to lock and you're looking at shadow, midtone, and highlight, these ones are completely different than these ones. So how you know that? Testing them, and this is really, really important way. For example, here I have an image. Let me just go here. And how I balance this image, you can balance it using the color wheels here. Or for example, in Resolve, what you have is you have the color wheels, but it's also good the primary bars. And when you're talking about balancing, it's great to have, answering also Nicolas' question, the RGB parade. One of the reasons that I like to use the primary bars with the RGB parade, because here I have RGB and here I have RGB. When I'm using the color wheels, I don't have RGB. I have another color system that is hue, saturation, and luminance. All right, this is hue, this is saturation, and luminance is this. So it's like another language in some way. So for example, when I'm going here, and here I'm in Colorista in Premiere, and I want to balance this image, what you need to do is think in the complementary colors theory. So for example, if I have a lot of blue in the midst, what I need to do is go to the opposite, and I start balancing. There you go. And if I have a lot of red here, I will go to the opposite. A little bit more. And now I'm balancing. Oh. Because I'm using a lot of programs, so I don't have a lot of latency. But as you notice, I really balance so fast the image using the complementary color part. That is a really good option to do it. And also, for example, in a scope box, you have a vector scope in shadow, midtone, and highlights. That is really good for using these color wheels with the vector scope. For example, if I have the vector scope here, look. Oh. Is okay, this one, no, the other one. There you go. So you go to the complementary color to balance one color class from one and another one. Okay, and finally, to give you the word, guys, sorry. So we were thinking, okay, what are the steps to start working with an image? All right. So the first thing is that there are no rules. For example, I have this image over here. And what I like always is to go with the offset. And then with the offset, start moving. For example, what I can find, or what I try to find with the offset, a neutral gray. For example, it can be here. And then what I do is probably go with the gain up and then with the lift. Yes, and this is like finding the correct exposure. But right now I'm looking at exposure subjectively, yes, by my eye. I can make it also offset, contrast over here, and then pivot. Yes, and now I'm fine. Or I can make it just using lift, gain for a white point, and then gamma. Yes. There are many different techniques that you can find them. But for example, if you are using this one, try to find a good taste for the gamma. One person say, look at the gain and the lift using the waveform and the scopes, and the gamma, look at the image. I sometimes say, think that an image is like a hamburger. You have two breads. This is the gain. One bread is the gain, another bread is the lift, but the meat, the stick, is the gamma. The gamma is where you can find all the density of your image. And this is really important for you to use it and always try to move it. You're going to find really nice things doing it.
I call it the flavor.
Love that analogy.
And it's lunchtime.
Hamburger green.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Now you make me
hungry.
hungry, Diego.
Yes. We're just about to jump over to Max, and we had a question from Raj.
Yes.
Actually, it was perfect timing for this question. So I wondered if I could quickly ask you your opinion on this, Diego, and then I'll probably ask Max the same thing. But how would you start grading if you're starting off with log video?
All right. I will, really fast, if I know the camera color space and the log curve, I will make a color space transform. We will talk about that color space transform later. If I don't have it, I will use offset, contrast, and pivot.
Got it. Okay, so you don't have to start with a LUT or a transform in the color space. You could just do it with the tools here. But as Diego's saying, Raj, that's a whole topic, LUTs and so on, technical ones and creative ones, which we are definitely getting into over the course of these sessions. But the quick answer is it depends. You could do either or. But I think Max has got a good indication of that as well in his session.
Yeah.
So I'm going to transfer the screen over to you, Max. Thank you for that, Diego, by the way.
No,
Some
thank
excellent
you, guys.
tips in there, especially for that tint trick. I think that was excellent.
All right, wait a second. So, can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
I am showing Resolve now. This is actually my personal curiosity, because, well, I don't have expensive cinema camera, but I still love to produce content. I love to shoot, and I just enjoy color grading. And the main questions that I have is like, are pixels are just the same? Is more pixel means better, or is there a better pixels, or sort of? And then the question that I have to me is actually, because my camera is a DSLR camera, and it only shoots 8-bit footage. And the question is, can I still produce content with that, and can I still color grade that? Because whenever you talk with colorists, most of them, more of them, are prefer to work with the 10-bit image or more, right? 12-bit, and the bigger the better, the more the merrier. But what if I'm limited to my 8-bit footage? I stumble upon a great blog from Stu, Prolos. He's actually the director in Red Giant in Maxon as well, and he has suggested that shooting flat could probably the better solutions when you are shooting with 8-bit, dealing with 8-bit footage. I'm sorry, I can show you again. The blog is prolos.com, so feel free to check it out. It's really nice. And yeah, so I shot one footage completely standard using the standard profile. And then the second footage, I used the CineStyle from Technicolor. That's particular flat profile. You can download it from Technicolor, and then you have to upload it to your camera using some cables and so on, and using the camera utility software. But the other flat profile, which is like really interesting one, is just by messing around with the available profile, which is the one that I use is just the natural profile, but I reduce the saturation to 0, reduce the sharpness to 0, and the actual recipe, you can see that in prolos.com. So sharpness 0, contrast 0, and saturations -2. So that's what that's the profile of this the third image. And then the third one, because I was curious, I thought that I can just buy some third-party log file, so that I can just install it in my camera and I can shoot log. Yes, I can do that. And there are some third-party options that you can just buy in the internet that can make you that will allows you to shoot C-Log3 in the 8-bit footage camera, 8-bit camera. In this case, I am using the worst cinema camera and everyone can think of. It's the EOS 6D Mark II, but it's still okay. You can still work out using some of the workaround I stumble upon. So my method of testing is that first I shot this color chart, and I use the color match features in Resolve that is over here. And when I select the color chart, it will give me the layout, and then I already did that just to save time. I don't think I need to repeat that from 0. I just walk you through the process. So I did the color match, and I select the color temperature of 6100, because that's the white balance that I am using when I was shooting, and that's by measuring checking the still image in Lightroom, and I saw that the image that I recorded was in 6100. So I choose 6100 and I select match, and I got that. And then after that, I did my white balance by where is it? By using the power window. So I just limit my image to the black, the gray, and then the pure white. And I select the, sorry, let me zoom in. Where is it? There you go. So I select the third blocks from the right, this particular one. I did the same for all 4 image. And let me turn it off. And then after that, I try to balance my color by using the same method again. So what I did is just I limit my, sorry, I have to activate that one. Yes, so I just limit my screen on this color, and I was balancing them using the hue versus hue curves. And as you can see, the color line up perfectly in the vector scope. So the red goes to red, the yellow goes to yellow, the green, and so on and so forth. So I was pretty happy with that. And let me go back. And then what I found out that is, hold on. There you go. So after messing around with all this image, I find out that the profile, the picture profile that allows me to do all this color work is the flat, because when I'm using the log image, as you can see, I start to get bending in the gradations, in the gradient in the sky, and this is really shocking me. But yeah, I learned a new thing now. So you know, you cannot get so much data out of the 8-bit footage by using the log profile. So
This is really interesting. So
yes.
often we hear shoot flat, but you have to be careful, as you just pointed out, because the whole point about flat is it assumes that you've got more data and you've got a wider color gamut image to begin with. But you're right, these cameras, especially the 8-bit cameras, come with different profiles to kind of lull you into a false sense of security that you can get away with doing that. So it's great to show this, especially on footage that is using H.264, because when you start doing these kind of controls, then you reveal the macro blocking. You kind of reveal the limitations of the actual footage and the codec.
Yeah. What was the name of the profile?
The one that I use in the second profile is the Cine Style from Technicolor. I think if you go to their website, you can still download them. And then the other flat profile that I use is just the normal camera picture profile, but I reduce the sharpness to 0. It's based on Stu Block in prolos.com. So I just reduce the sharpness to 0, contrast to 0, and saturation to 0. It's just really fast fix. And if I apply look on top of that, it's still okay. I mean, my gradations are still fine. As you can see, I see no banding. And I'm pretty happy with that. But if I use the log profile for my 8-bit camera, and let me, yes, I think you can already see heavy banding in the sky, and that's really disappoint me a lot. It's like, yeah, I think I have to stick with a flat profile from now on. So in my conclusions is that, yeah, whenever you want to shoot with 8-bit camera, I think flat profile is the answer, and it is the good way to go, because it gives you the most wiggle room when you are color correcting. Meanwhile, the standard profile is also not bad. Well, yeah, we can argue that, you know, all the baked-in contrast and saturations, it's bad for post productions, but there are some probably still some use when you are using the standard profile right away from your camera. Especially, I think the scenario that you can use that is probably for streaming, for example, for content that doesn't need any post productions work on that. So
you mean live streaming, not
live streaming, exactly. Like what I am doing at the moment. Oh,
yes.
I forgot to share my camera. I'm sorry, guys.
There's your camera right there.
And
now
I
your camera is a USB.
Camera. Sorry.
I want to add one thing to that. I think whenever it comes to digital sharpening, and anything that has to do with that. Like if you're using that just so you can focus, that's not necessarily a good thing. So that's why there's, and I'll touch on this in a moment, but you know, you have all kind of assistive things inside of cameras now that allow you to see focus better. So even if you smooth out your image, you remove the sharpening, you can actually have focus peaking, which just gives you like a red outline around these fine details. So like digital sharpening, in my most honest opinion, I think is not a great thing to have, and you should always look to remove it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But you know, and also like think of like green screen. Whenever you shoot something for green screen, the person in post is going to smooth out that green screen and do some color smoothing before they even start to sample the image. So whenever you do have stuff like this that you can reveal macro blocking, and you can see the, you know, the gradient starts to fall apart, or you can see all the pixels, the best thing you can do is smooth it out. If you can smooth it out in camera before they even get it, now you have a really desirable look for even an 8-bit camera.
Nice. So yeah, that was my little actions there, trying to figure out which one better for 8-bit. But coming back to the topic from Diego, when you are new to color corrections, if you may, please allow me to steer you away from Resolve a little bit. And I want to point you out to a very great tools that you can find in Red Giant portfolio inside Magic Bullet suite, is the guided color corrections inside Colorista. So for example, yeah, wait a second. There you go. So for example, if somebody is brand new to color grading and color correcting, there's one particular tools that I want to show you inside Colorista, which is like really perfect for this, because you can also use this as a learning tool. This is the workflow adapted from the colorist in the industry. So it's called the guided color corrections. Once you launch the guided color corrections, you will have this window noticing you that you are in guided color corrections. And the first thing that you have to choose is that the color space, how your footage was shot. Either it was log video or it was flat video. So in case you have a log image, you can just select the log image and proceed. And like Diego said, the first thing that you have to adjust in this image is the black level, the contrast of the image, the luma of the image. Here I have the black level adjustment, and if I go too far, I have the indicator, and I can back up a little bit. And again, as what Diego said, to adjust the luma correctly, here guided color corrections turns the colored image into monochromatic image, so you can just add just the correct amount of luma into your image. And here I got the white level adjustment. I can back up a little bit, and you see there's a blown highlight over there, and the midtones. And so it's a step-by-step guided color corrections. And then you got the saturations. And as you can see here, you have like the vector scope that tells you, oh, you oversaturated. Okay, back up a little bit. And then now you have the color balance. You have the sliders to play around with, or you have the eyedropper tools, or you can even just play around with the value in the vector scope. And then once you finish, you can just press next, and you have the comparisons of your image before and after. So that is, in my opinion, is such a great learning tools for entering color corrections in general.
Before you change
that also answers. Yeah. We're all jumping in now. Sorry, yeah, go on, Tony.
No, I was just going to say that's also that. Look at that guided color correction as a form, and then also everything you did, it gives you the technical recipe, and then you can go back and actually click on the guided color correction again, and it'll take you back through the whole thing, and you can actually adjust after the fact. So it's not just like a hidden set of settings. It's not a hidden recipe. It's not the computer doing the work for you. You're dialing it
Yes.
in by eye. You go through the menu items, and then if you want to do it again, you can. So I just wanted to add that.
Exactly. And it's you can still mess around with the value after the facts. Right.
And I will also
Great
say that
stuff.
it's a really, what I love is like, it's like in your own set. You are defining the light, then you're defining the temperature, then you are defining the density, the saturation. So it's really guided to, and it's the process that you want to do when you are first approaching to an image that is really a technical part.
Absolutely, yes.
I believe
So
an hour has passed already.
exactly, I think we talk over the time again, Simon.
You have fun.
So yeah,
Exactly.
on that note, I think if there's no more questions from the audience, I just want to let you know, guys, that this session is recorded, and if you registered to this webinar, you will receive the links to the recording an hour later. And then if you would like to find where this recording is, you can just simply go to YouTube and go to our channel, Maxon Volume Program Training. This sessions will also be uploaded to this channel as well. And over to you, Simon.
Well, I think you've done all the things. This is great. We didn't dramatically overrun, so this is good. We got most of the things we wanted to say in there, and just to kind of open this topic out. But as you can see, I think there's some key takeaways here. I love what we've kind of discussed through here about knowing the tools, and in some cases letting the tools guide you, and also getting used to how to measure those values visually using scopes before you shoot and afterwards. And so that's kind of the setup, because next week we dive into slightly further into the color grading process, and we're discussing more, as the title says, what does it mean to be a colorist? And we'll kind of develop that idea. Now we've got a handle on what to look out for when you're shooting and when you're balancing, and what the next steps might be. And just a couple of things. Glenn had a couple of good questions about transforms and inputs and outputs, and what you need to do to set up for different color spaces. And that's definitely something we're going to get into, Glenn, when we actually get into the output and how you then output for multiple different versions. So I think that's week 5. I think that's the last Monday in November we're covering that. But we might well stick in a couple of comments about that along the way. So we're designing this to be like a whole range of things. And if you're watching the recording, just jump onto the next one. so like talking into the future.
Binge it.
But this has been brilliant. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending this. We really appreciate that it's difficult to carve out the time and also balance this with your deadlines. But also to Max and Diego and to Tony, thank you so much for generously sharing your knowledge. This is something I wish I'd known years and years ago. I spent so much time trying to figure this out. So it's great to have this kind of access to your knowledge. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Gracias a todos.
All right.
Yes,
Gracias
thank you.
All right.
Brilliant. All right. Take it easy, everyone. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.
See you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right.
Thank you.